My name is Fazana Badiwal.
My name is Doug Downs. Just before we get started, Farzana, we got a great tire pump on Podchaser from Parole de Poet. It's obviously like a pseudonym, right? I don't know if I'm saying it right. Parole de Poet left a 5-star rating in this review, quote, by far the most relevant PR podcast out there today. So many great episodes with insights and strategies for anyone in the industry. 10 stars.
Wow. Thank you so much, my new best friend.
You're a poet by any terms, by any means. Our guest this week is Irene Lungu. Irene, did I say your last name right?
You just passed the Zambian test with flying colors.
Yes, I'm ready. Joining today from Lusaka in Zambia. Hello, Irene.
Hello.
How are
my
things?
name is Irene. Yeah. Good. Zambia is nice and warm at this time of the year, not too cold yet.
Right. The shoulder seasons are good, right? Summer, oh my goodness. Yeah. And you're in the southern hemisphere, so you're in fall before your winter.
Yes.
Perfect. You're the president of the Zambia Institute of Public Relations. You've played a key role in advancing PR regulation in Zambia and currently serve on the board of the Global Alliance for Public Relations and Communication Management. You also hold the position of head of corporate affairs at the Zambia Forestry and Forest Industries Corporation.
Correct. Thank you. Thank you for having me here today.
Now, first of all, I really want to head to Zambia one day, so I hope I'm going to have the opportunity. And what I wanted to ask you is, I'm based in the UK, Doug's based in Canada. Countries that we operate in, we do not have the same level of regulation that Zambia has brought in for the PR industry. I wanted to ask you, what makes Zambia's PR and comms landscape so unique? And what actually led to this push for formal regulation of the profession? Because when you look at it from a global perspective, you've got some countries who are regulating, some are not, and you've got some people who are champions for bringing in more regulation and others who reject it. So I wanted to just understand from your journey, what is it about Zambia specifically that created those conditions that made it conducive to actually having the legislation pushed through and the industry regulated?
Truly, we sit in a very special landscape as a PR industry in Zambia. And as you know, we are a developing country, but we continue looking at the international landscape to benchmark and learn from others. And the professions in Zambia are also evolving, across different disciplines, from medicine to engineering to the legal profession. Likewise, those of us that have been practicing public relations and communications have also been coming together and saying, we are a profession. We want to do a good job communicating and be good at what we do as PR and communication professionals. In August of 2022, Zambian government enacted what is referred to as the Zambia Institute of Public Relations and Communication Act, ZIPRAC Act number 11 of 2022. So that's like a huge milestone. What that means is that our government of the Republic of Zambia recognized public relations and communication as a profession, and then mandated ZIPRAC as a statutory body to regulate the conduct of PR and communication in Zambia. It's a wonderful step for us. We are super excited. We know we are still growing as a profession, but that in itself marks the beginning of another long journey for PR and communication industry in Zambia.
And can I ask, was there much resistance to?
Sure, there were mixed reactions, and I think that should be expected in any industry. Perhaps the same would be the case when this process perhaps is being undertaken in another country. First of all, the truth of the matter is that this is an industry where anybody feels they can practice, because for a lot of people, they think PR and communication is around media relation, organizing events, planning meetings, doing those kinds of things, a space which they think you could throw somebody who's a good organizer in that space. For us as PR and communication professionals, part of the drive to being professionalized is to recognize the fact that we don't want to throw any other person in there unless they are qualified to do this work. So there were mixed reactions from some segments of the population, but generally speaking, from across the industry, there was more support, there was unison towards legislation. other than those that were objecting to it. And I think that, to be very honest, perhaps those that were not for the legislation is out of discomfort, because perhaps they come from very diverse background and don't qualify to be in PR and communication. So it was a point of discomfort of what happens to me, who's probably an HR expert, as an example, but sitting in a PR or communication related portfolio. What does it mean when this industry is being regulated? So yes, the journey itself to legislation did cause discomfort among some of our colleagues within the profession, but it was because perhaps you're sitting there and without PR and a communication background. But all in all, the majority of the PR profession felt the need to unite and drive legislation as a good go-to advancing the industry.
Yeah, so I think I'm qualified to be a PR person. Years of it tells me maybe I am, right? I got to admit, it freaks me out. Irene, the whole concept freaks me out because it feels like controlled speech, right? You can say this, you can't say that. And I, the big government or the big association, I dictate how it ought to be. That freaks me out, man. That's not freedom of speech. What changes have you seen? Why does it work for you and maybe it won't work somewhere else?
Sure. I think let me start by stating that obviously one of the things that government provided for was a transition period. We know there are non-PR people sitting in PR-related positions. So the Act itself does provide for a transition of preparing for bridging that gap. But I can attest to you that already we have seen very significant changes to the way we operate as an industry. So first of all, the Zambia Institute for Public Relations and Communications, ZIPRAC, existed as a voluntary association. We were Zambia Association for Public Relations and Communications, ZAPRAC. And so it was a group of people saying, look, we need to work together, but we need to do it in a professional way. So here is a statutory body now created by the Act. And it's not to gag anyone, to throw anybody out of the industry. What that has done is that it has actually put standards for the practice of public relations and communication. So what that means is that if you are in PR and communication and you want to practice in Zambia as an individual or a PR firm, you need to register with the Institute. So it helps us know who's practicing PR. Beyond that, as an institute, we actually went ahead and did a survey of capacity building needs, a membership survey on training needs. So it allows us then to, for instance, offer CPD that responds to the needs of members, because, people go to universities and different institutions to study PR and related courses, journalism, communication. Now we even have specific courses in public relations. And yet the truth of the matter is that we are operating in a fast changing industry where even anybody who went to university 5 years, even 2 years ago, should not be comfortable with whatever they have. You have to keep adapting and responding to what the demands of the industry are. So it allows us then to, first of all, regulate those that are practicing, because they have to register with the institute, so we know where they're sitting and what they're doing, the issue of standards. And most of all, I think really important for us, it allows us to enforce a code of ethics as an institute to encourage professionalism within the industry, which I think is really important for all of us, because yes, we are in an environment that is asking us to provide information very quickly to respond to the demands of society, but are we ethical in our conduct? So I think those are really key in terms of what has significantly changed. And we can see, even in terms of numbers, people that are registering with the Institute, we are certainly getting more people registering with the Institute than when we were operating as a voluntary association. So it's significant.
Irene, they often say that with power comes responsibility. 15 years ago, when I first entered into the industry, we didn't have much power. We would craft pictures and press releases and send it to journalists. And the journalists were the gatekeepers. They had the power. They could say yes, they could say no, they could say how do they want to influence by the press release, and they would have complete editorial control. Quite right. But now, 15 years on, I find that the tiny sort of amount of work that we're doing in PR is related to media relations, and the overwhelming majority is content production, which goes straight into the public domain through a plethora of channels, from podcasts to social media to Substack and blogs and websites and so forth. We don't actually have the gatekeeper anymore. and and as we can see, legacy media is declining, which I find is a very sad fact. But the reality is that we have more power than we used to have because we are not working through gatekeepers anymore. We are the gatekeepers, and journalists always understood that sense of responsibility. So they would always think about what gets through their threshold in terms of, is it balanced, is it impartial, and holding people in power to account. Do you think us as PRs that we have to rethink the way that we think about ethics and responsibility, and that we're not the PRs of 15 years ago? We have a different responsibility to those who were just working in, say, media relations.
True. You're really right about this challenge that we have. And yes, like you said, traditionally, there will be a gatekeeper there trying to balance the story. But here is a challenge now for a PR practitioner to ensure that, I think, in fact, now is the time more than ever that the demands for adherence to ethical standards and professional conduct become even more prominent than before. So, because we are in charge of creating the content and disseminating it. The role of the gatekeeper, as we traditionally knew it in the media link that we had, is almost disappeared, because you can now just go ahead and publish content. In Zambia, I would say in the formal circles, perhaps Facebook or LinkedIn are one of the commonest channels that are being used. So what that means is that the PR practitioner now needs to be factual in the information that is being disseminated. It should be transparent. There should be no intent for misinformation, because once you do that, then your ethical conduct is threatened and really looked badly upon from all perspectives of society. So it now requires one to be the issues of integrity become even really critical now, because whatever information is being disseminated, is it truthful? Are we transparent? To what extent is it serving the needs of the society or target audience that is being reached? Yes, now more than ever, when the gatekeeper's role is almost taken away, it requires that PR practitioners must be very factual in the manner in which they communicate information.
From your spot on the Global Alliance Board, ethical standards, is there different emphasis put on different things in different parts of the world? And are there gaps in some spots that way?
I think that generally the principles around ethical standards, there's a resemblance anywhere in the world.
We have a lot in common, regardless of what corner of the world we're from.
Exactly. And at the center of it all is a call from the Global Alliance point of view, the call for responsible communication. So responsible communication means that, for instance, when you're a profit-making institution, as an example, your communication must go beyond your quest to make profits for the organization and show responsibility or care for the environment or the community in which you're operating as a basic principle. The principles of integrity, adherence to a code of conduct. So in that regards, professionalism, being factual, and make sure that it's not misinformation or miscommunication, that the information that is being churned out is correct and factual, are the same. There could be variances, to be honest with you, based on the differences in which our societies are set up. I mean, if I look at the way Zambia is set up from where you are sitting in Canada or in the UK where Fazana is, we live in different societies. So the demands of the political environments in which we sit are different. There are cultural differences sometimes that ask us to look at the way we communicate perhaps a little differently across the different societies. But the principles behind it are the same. So the demands of ethical standards are the same, because at the end of it all, it's about responsible communication and being factual in the information that is being churned out to the public.
Do you have an example, even however small, of differences, say, between the US and Zambia? Are there any? Can you think of any differences that might stand out? And they're not necessarily black and white. They're nuances, right? They're different emphasis on different parts of what we might share ethically.
Sure. So let me give an example. I mean, coming from a rich cultural perspective, or a culture such as Zambia, where we're based in this part of Southern Africa and the developed worlds, such as the US. In here, for instance, we also have other factors that come into play, such as the gender dimension. So I'll give you an example, for instance, that when you go into a community, because there are cultural differences in the manner in which who makes the decision between. So gather a group of male and females together in a community. The gender dimension kicks in and comes into play because we are coming from a background that's taught us that the decision maker is male and not female.
Right.
As an example. Whereas when you walk into a developed society, such as the US, you walk into a classroom, the girls who might be as very assertive as the boys. But here is the culture where we have now learned to teach the girls, no, this is your place too. You can claim it and be as assertive as they are. So from the communication perspective, then you are challenged to ensure that even as you look at the need for communication from that perspective, then you are considerate of the fact that you are going into a cultural setting that has a different lens in the manner in which they look at even just the gender dimension of who makes the decision between the males and females. So there are gaps that will exist in the manner in which we communicate. However, that does not take away the need to be factual in the manner in which we communicate. So if there's a topical issue affecting society in that regard, so I will give an example. For instance, in Zambia, we're sort of just recovering from the impact of a drought. So when you're communicating information like that, it's affecting everybody regardless of gender. So you will have to be factual regardless of who you are talking to, because the impacts of a drought in a country like ours are being felt across the society. Yeah, so the differences are there, but I think you have to really study the impact of the subject matter that you're looking at to see how it affects the society that you are addressing.
So, Irene, I wanted to ask about disinformation and misinformation. Having read the report from the World Economic Forum, they rank number one in terms of short-term risks in the next 2 years, disinformation and misinformation. It's in the sphere of public relations. Now, I wanted to ask you, as you champion responsible communications from your board position at Global Alliance, I wanted to ask you, what can we do individually and collectively to play our part in this society ill that is creating problems, and it's within our sphere of influence, our profession?
Sure, there is a huge influence on our profession, and I think that without a doubt we can see that because of their great benefits, obviously, that we have to derive from the advances that have happened in communication, to the extent now that we actually say that anybody now can be a publisher. But what that means is that because people are so quick to publish information, some of it is not verified. The side effects of it, obviously, as you said, is an issue of misinformation, very common. So from a global perspective, and especially from GA, the reason why we are championing responsible communication is because of the potential threats or impacts that it has on a society. Let me just, and I think in Africa, as an example, in Zambia, fortunately, our political system has been very stable, to be honest with you. But however, we still have certain segments of the society that are incensed by false information or fake information that is being disseminated. For me, I would say that critical to that is, and this is what we keep advocating for as Global Alliance, responsible communication. Responsible communication in the sense that whereas everybody enjoys these rights to human rights or freedom of expression, at the tail end of freedom of expression is responsible communication. Even when you go out into this space where the gatekeepers no longer have this space or zone to regulate what you are disseminating as an individual, it's always very important for us as individuals to be able to check what we are sending out and how it's impacting other individuals as well as members of society. Without a doubt, we have seen certain causes being incited by people's reaction to information which may not necessarily be factual. So the impact of what you send out as an individual, first of all, is really critical. So that's where responsible communication starts with. collectively, and this is where professional bodies such as ZPRAC and other PR bodies come into play, because our role is to keep reminding particularly PR and communication professionals that yes, whereas technology now is providing this privilege to disseminate information almost instantly and any time of the day, there is a call at the end of all that for ethical conduct in what we're churning out and taking out to the public, because that collective responsibility is what makes society a better society. So individual action from me as Irene has an impact on the next individual in society. And so then as PR and communication practitioners, we keep looking at how we're doing our job very well. How best can we do this to ensure that the interests of society beyond my interest as an individual are being served?
In our last episode, before you go, I'd like you to answer the question that our previous guest, Olivia Fajardo, left behind for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm ready, Fazana.
What is your best tip for successfully navigating transformation?
It's a difficult question, very loaded, but let me attempt it. I would start first by stating that as an individual, never settle. Never settle and be comfortable with what you know or what you're doing as an individual, because we are living in a dynamic society where the needs of society and individuals are continually changing. And I'll just bring it back to the PR profession. So even the communication needs that are present today are not what we responded to before. And I'll just take back from the background we came from the media background that we came from. I remember those days where when something big, a major event has happened, a political pronouncement as an example, we waited for a national broadcaster or a big media agency to confirm this thing has happened. That's not happening anymore, because when you take too long to announce, to make that pronouncement, somebody has already sent it, through X or so many other channels that are available. So it means that the world is changing every day. And because the world is changing every day, it means transformation is changing every day. And so as individuals, it means we must never settle. We must be willing to learn how to move with that change every day.
Such a good question. Your turn, Irene. What question would you like to leave behind for our next guest?
For the next guest, I think in this conversation, talking about PR and communication, we have talked a lot about ethics. So I would like the next guest to take on this mantle and explain, is it possible with the current demands of a dynamic and ever-changing society to remain ethical? How does one do that, given the demands for quick information that society is asking from us as PR and communication professionals?
Awesome. Thanks so much again for your time, Irene.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Fazana. Quite an interesting conversation. I look forward to engaging with you more. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene.